So there's that happening on the one hand, but you also mentioned SAP. So big news happening with the SAP executive board as they basically have released their chief revenue officer, Scott Russell, and their chief marketing officer, Julia White. And to me, that it feels like an odd move, just looking at it, that you would simultaneously get rid of your two top go-to-market officers. It definitely speaks to some, at the very least, not being very happy with your current go-to-market strategy and approach. I think that's pretty obvious. And from an operational perspective, I would think that if you are cutting off the head of your current go-to-market approach, that for at least the short term, you are going to be pretty dependent on farming your base. And that is the big takeaway I would probably take away, that I would think about as an SAP customer at looking at this, that this is probably going to mean perhaps some additional pressure from your account managers or additional focus on SAP products being pushed at you, perhaps even more than before, because I just don't understand how otherwise SAP will simply sell stuff. And maybe that's just a lack of imagination on my part.
Oh, I don't think so. I mean, I think I've told the story before on here that, I used to run a lot of big executive dinners, and the rule I had is there are two words, we weren't allowed to say, and they were Oracle and SAP, right? The companies that we've long had these challenges with, in terms of just their acquisition processes and managing and working with them and all of that. And I think clearly they've struggled. They've struggled going back to, the lead into this. This whole transition to the cloud has just not been kind to them. But I also think it's not just them. We're going to talk next in a second about Intel, and we've talked in the past about VMware, and we've talked about Oracle, and we sort of have this old guard collection of tech companies that are still incredibly, wealthy companies. They drive a lot of revenue still.
Mm-hmm.
They will for the foreseeable future, but they are mostly just entrenched. Their revenue is driven by the lock-in factor, that it is incredibly expensive to displace them. They, for the most part, are not being seen as providing the sort of strategic value or in a strategic place to the extent that it is worth making the investment to replace them, and so they stick around. They're just there. And so it ends up being this. And SAP, clearly in the days that Bill McDermott was there, they were clearly trying to break through that. They were clearly trying to find newfound relevance. And I thought we're doing some really good, interesting things. But certainly over the last few years, I've been kind of not been paying attention to them because they have just failed to really execute on that, failed to really get traction with S/4HANA, really get traction with getting people sort of over that hump to kind of break through, who they were. And I guess, I mean, the other big mystery for this is what we're referencing, and we'll put the link in the notes, an SAP press release. But this press release is 6 days old, and I'm finding zero news on this. So I don't know if this is just a big collective shrug of the market going, yeah, they weren't selling anything anyway, or I don't know. It's bizarre. If we're misreading what this press release is saying, because it's also written in very weird, arcane sort of language, talking about resigning from the executive committee or executive board or whatever it was, and the whole thing is just very odd to me. But I think it just speaks to this sort of shift we're seeing around these sort of legacy old guard tech companies.